Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum. In today's edition of Five Influential Horror, we have Luther Kross, who is a horror author and a new horror friend that I met on Twitter. And we are going to talk a little bit about his books at the end. But first, we're going to jump into his Five Influential Horror and why he picked them. So we can just start with your first one, which I think was The Evil Dead.
Yes, it is. I'm not even really sure where to begin. Obviously, this one's like a cult favorite,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
there's so many things to love about this movie.
Yeah.
I think just in general, the camp part of it, the campiness of it is just like one of my favorite things, obviously,
Sure.
because and I think that's why I put it at the top of my list too, is because it's one of those things that reminded me when I go back and I watch it or I think about it, it reminds me that horror doesn't necessarily have to be serious 100% of the time.
Sure.
Like you can throw some little one-liners in there,
Yeah.
have some corny scenes that, maybe are just off the wall or don't, things that people wouldn't expect, what I mean? Just stuff to kind of mix it up. And I think Evil Dead does that very well. It's just moments in that movie where you just look at it and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Like the pencil in the ankle scene, I think, is one of those scenes for me where it's just like, it's just so strange, like who grabs a pencil and stabs someone in the ankle? But there it is,
Yeah. I know what you mean. It feels kind of out of place, but then it just works. And I agree. I think there's a few scenes like that feel like if maybe they had been done by somebody else, they would disconnect as far as scenes flow. But you're right. There's a bunch of moments like that where you're just kind of I think one of my moments like that is when Scotty's like, I don't care if she he's like, I don't care about her. She's your girlfriend. You deal with it. And you're just like, what the hell?
Yeah. Like, wait, I thought you guys were all friends. Like, Or I think the other one that really always caught me off guard is the scene where after she's decapitated, her body comes back from the grave and it's like dancing around in the yard doing ballet. It's like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
But so like I said, it's just one of those movies. It's a lot of fun. There are some really good, gory, scary moments, but overall it's just like this strange mix of and Sam Raimi he knocked it out of the park on that one. So and it also is where I kind of got introduced to Lovecraft because so they feature the Necronomicon,
right?
And so after I watched the movie, I'm just like, okay, well, that sounds familiar. Like I kind of felt like I'd heard of it before. So I did a little bit of Google searching and found a bunch of stuff on Lovecraft. And I was like, oh, what's this? And I just kind of dove down that rabbit hole.
So then what did you think of the remake? Or, well, it's not a remake, but it's sort of a remake. The new one.
Like the more recent one?
Yeah, the more recent one.
I feel like if you separate it from the original franchise, it stands alone very well.
Yes.
But there's it's a very serious horror film, right?
It is.
Like it actually cuts all the camp out, and it's there's just a lot of gore, there's a lot of not really jump scares necessarily, but just moments that kind of grab you, and you're like, oh whoa, and it and I think in that respect it's an awesome film, but to me, it doesn't really fit in with the actual Evil Dead series,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I will say, one of the things that a lot of people complain about, oh, it's just a bunch of blood flying around everywhere. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I mean, that's kind of part of the allure, So I thought it was great. Honestly did.
Yeah, it's a bit of a gore fest. I actually think when I saw the original Evil Dead, that was probably when I started even realizing that I even liked gore, because I don't know that I really knew that before. And then seeing a lot of stuff that was older but new for me, this kind of this gradual transition into realizing that I actually don't really mind gore films as long as they're done effectively. But I think those are, I mean, even with the campiness of the Evil Dead, I feel like it's still effective, because it's still you may chuckle, or you may be like, okay, that was kind of out of left field, but you're still at the same time kind of ooh, kind of
yeah you're still kind of cringing on the inside, like, oh, that's gross.
Yeah, for sure. It's still a little unsettling. So it's and that means that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing on both accounts. So
well, and one of the things I always found interesting too about the first two films is that even though the second one is named Evil Dead 2, it's not really like a sequel.
Right.
It's more of like a retelling of the original movie.
Yeah.
And that's just one of those things that like adds to the charm of the whole series. It's just this strange, like, I'm not really sure what Sam Raimi was doing back then.
Right. But you're like, yeah, but it works for me. I remember going into the second one thinking, why are we back? I'm so confused, because I didn't go into it realizing what the story was supposed to be. And then seeing it all the way through, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I got it. Because you're thinking like, there's no way in hell you could get me back after everything that happened. Like, absolutely not. Why are we back? But, and then you like, it doesn't take very long for you to kind of figure out where it's going with it. But yeah, it was fun. I like the second one too. I think the second one is definitely like, it's funny how gradual I felt like the kind of campiness, cheesiness was. And then Army of Darkness was like, just chains off. Like they just did.
Yeah. Like, I feel like what happened was like, he was probably trying to make a serious film with the first one.
Yes.
And then when people started pointing out the hokiness, he was just like, okay, that's fine, I'll just embrace that, that's okay.
Right.
Like, he just went with it. He was like, fine, we'll do this.
Yeah, and they have kind of a silly relationship in general, don't they? Like Bruce Campbell, like I feel like they're very silly people, so it kind of was probably easier for them to embrace that part as far as just kind of being who they are and letting it like go,
just rolling with it.
So I like the Evil Dead. That's one that I feel so that one actually made it on 2 other lists, at least one. But it's so crazy because like nothing like that, like the person I spoke to about it already said nothing like what you said. And it's so crazy how people can appreciate films and then be like kind of high on their list, but not for any of the same reasons
at all. Completely different reasons.
Because his reasoning and the reason he liked it is like nothing like what you said at all. So I think that's kind of funny and interesting in general. So
that is interesting. But see, that's one of the great things about art, I think, is that everybody has their own way of interpreting it. And I mean, like if you look at a painting, every person that walks by it's going to have a different feeling and get a different idea of what's going on. You know what I mean? And that's just one of the best things about art. And the fact that even though that's how it operates, it still has the capacity to bring people together. You know what I mean? Like even though everybody's got a different viewpoint, everybody can get, like, you can get 10 people in a room and they all like the same movie or the same series on TV or whatever, So
and I think it's interesting too, because like I'm not I think I'm going to talk about this on every video, sorry everybody, but like I'm not a huge A24 film person. Like I don't like a lot of those movies, but one of the things that I've kind of learned about myself is like my openness to like listening to other people that love them and why they love them. And I think it's interesting too to take 2 people, whether they like or dislike the same thing, but being able to gain perspective about what that film did for them, or what they noticed that maybe like I didn't, or what they got from it that I didn't. And it's interesting because as much as I hated so many of them, I get these conversations where I'm like, maybe I feel like I maybe need to revisit them, because people just point out stuff that just didn't click for me when I saw it the first time. And because I didn't like it, I didn't watch it again. And so it is interesting, like whether you like it or you don't like it, when you come together about it, just getting like different perspectives and hearing what other people got out of it too is really interesting too. I like that part a lot. So your next one I loved, which was In the Mouth of Madness.
Yes.
And I had not seen that one. So but you go first. You tell me what you love about that one.
So I'm definitely a John Carpenter fanboy for sure. I think maybe the only film that he ever did that I wasn't too fond of was vampires. It's just I've never really been a huge vampire fan. Dracula, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, is probably the last vampire film I watched that I really, really enjoyed. I just feel like a lot of them are they're just very similar. Plot lines are very similar. Like somebody gets captured or whatever. And then of course Twilight steps on the scene, and that, I think that was the very end of my time like watching vampire films at all. I was just like, I'm done. I give up, man. Like they don't sparkle, they catch on fire.
You're ruining this whole thing.
Like there are set rules for vampires, okay, and you just completely destroyed it all. No, but yeah, so In the Mouth of Madness is one of those films that the first couple times I watched it, I didn't fully grasp quite what was going on. You know what I mean? Like,
I can see that. Yeah.
And so I think maybe like the third time I watched it, it finally clicked in my head that what's actually happening is, you know, Sutter Kane's creatures and his characters and everything are like becoming real.
Right.
But the first few times I watched it, I was just kind of like, well, no, then why this and why that? And what's with all the crazy? And then you got the lady at the hotel with the tentacles and stuff. And I'm like, I don't understand this at all. But it draws you in, you know, like you can't just turn it off and go away, you know, like you have to watch the film. And there again, it also taps pretty deeply into the Lovecraft mythos. You know, there's a whole lot of that in there.
Yep.
And just like the character, the Sutter Kane, I mean, Jürgen Prochnow is just like the perfect actor for that role.
Yeah, no, I agree.
He pulled it off flawlessly. Sam Neill plays his character to a T. Like the whole film is just a masterpiece. Like I don't know how else to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just yeah. And my favorite line, you know, the guy busts through the front window of the restaurant with a fire axe and jumps up on the table and crouches down. And he's like, "Do you read Sutter Kane?" I was like, whoa, like if that happened to me in real life, I know I would need a new pair of pants. I promise you I would need a new pair of pants. And it's just like, that is an epic film. And that one, there again, that one, I definitely feel an influence from that film in my own writing, because like I try to look for strange, weird things like that. Or, you know, it's one of those films too that kind of like takes everyday mundane stuff, like, you know, sitting down for a coffee at the restaurant to talk about a business venture.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you've got a crazy guy with a fire axe busting through the window, you know? So it's like, I try to pull things like that into my own writing and have moments where you're just like, okay, look, everything's normal and then the birds are singing and all of a sudden horror and death.
I was so glad that was, I don't know if I would have ever seen that movie if you hadn't put it on your list. I had never heard of it, so it was really good. I like that one a lot.
I'm glad I could pass that along.
Yeah. Oh, and this one's a good one too. Silence of the Lambs.
Yes. So Silence of the Lambs is one of those movies that, man, there are so many cringe moments in that movie. Like there's just so many times where you're sitting there watching it and you're like, can I actually finish this film? Like,
yes, I don't even know. A lot of discomfort.
And it also, but it's so like that film for me felt very realistic, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got like Buffalo Bill, who is like basically a ripoff of Ted Bundy, more or less. And then, you know, you've got Hannibal Lecter, who is kind of sort of based on Albert Fish. I don't know if you've heard of any of these people, but
no, I do. I know who they are.
Okay. I didn't know, because like some people are like, oh, serial killers. Like, no, I'm not. You know, and
I know. I mean, I probably don't know like the ins and outs of all of them, but I know the big ones. Yeah, and I know I know the correlations between the two. I actually had a roommate that was a really big, like she had read all the books before they did the movies, and so she had already talked to, like we had like a lot of talks about Silence of the Lambs and how like in all of the movies that she, like the ones she liked and she didn't like, and we talked a lot about that. So I had already heard about those correlations. So yeah, I'm following. You're good.
Gotcha. Okay. But yeah, so like it's because I think it was based in reality that way, like that really just like turned the intensity up, you know what I mean?
For
like
sure. No, 100%. Yeah.
And also it's interesting to watch Lecter's character kind of manipulate Jodie Foster's character, you know, and like they just the relationship that they create is very I don't know. It's like, it's almost it's like a quasi friendship towards the end. You know what I mean? Like it starts to feel kind of personal at some points. And you're like, you're watching it and you're like, you know, that's not safe, right? Like this guy's a dangerous villain. Like you just put the barrier back up.
That's right. That's right.
But it also, because it draws on people like Ted Bundy, you know, when you read about Ted Bundy, the actual person, you realize that, you know, these kind of people could be anyone. Like you don't know who your neighbors actually are, you know, or this guy that you say hi to every day when you're on your way to work. Like you don't know who these people are. you know, and that to me is actually legitimately terrifying.
That is terrifying.
You know, like I can't even imagine how I would feel if I went to work on Monday and found out that one of my coworkers was sent to prison for murder or something like that. Like my mind would be blown, you know, like, and then too, you start to think, well, how close did I come? Because I work with this person, you know what I mean? Like,
that's
and
true.
it's that to me is the real horror of a film like that. Is just, I mean, it's just this big unknown, basically. Yeah, definitely one of the best films I've ever seen. And Anthony Hopkins is just like,
I know.
If they couldn't have found anybody better for that role, honestly.
No, he's
Like
magic.
he is perfect for that role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other actors and actresses also do their roles well, but he just like, I don't know. It's kind of like how, you know, some people are like, well, Ryan Reynolds really is Deadpool. I kind of feel that way with Anthony Hopkins and Hannibal Lecter, you know, like he really is Hannibal Lecter. Like
he has to be, right? Like
well, and then, you know, that scene, and I actually think it's in the sequel, but that scene where he gets the guard into his cell and he's just bludgeoning him to death while listening to classical music. I'm like,
neutral, like his whole demeanor is like, just so like
he's not angry, he's just la la, like
just another day in the life.
Man, that
it's good. And it was Silence of the Lambs, I'm pretty sure it was that one, was one of the first horror movies that ever went up for an Oscar.
Oh, really?
It was one of the first ones that went up, and I think it won. I might have that part wrong, but I do know Silence of the Lambs was the first horror movie. And it was also like a big deal considering, like, you think, at least like going back and thinking about it, I feel like Anthony Hopkins is in that whole movie. I feel like he's in every second, but he's not. He has like a very short, compared to how long the film is and all the other things that happen, his time on screen is actually not even that crazy, like compared to most like villains or whatever. And but yeah, it was one of the first horror movies that got nominated for an Oscar. I can't remember if it won or not. I'm drawing a blank on that one, but it was like, I remember reading that. I did like a when I started my socials last year for the month of October, I did 30-second horror movie reviews every day, which is like such a stressful thing to do, but it worked out. It's fine. That was a year ago. But one of the ones that I did, I think, was Silence of the Lambs. And I talked about how like I didn't know that. And I just kind of assume horror gets kind of like cast out, you know, by like a lot of those types of things. But I think of any film, you know, in a more modern sense that deserved to be put up for an Oscar, like that's a good which takes us to Dolls, right? Yes. Dolls. Yeah.
So this is a film that literally scarred me for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was probably 6 or 7 years old the first time I saw it.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, so since then, Porcelain Dolls and I don't really get along.
Yeah.
I'm okay with like if it's someone else's house, but I won't have any in my house.
That's
like
fair.
I just
yeah.
No, yeah. And I think one of the things about it that I'm not really sure why that movie was quite so impactful for me. I've tried to break that down in my own head and think about it quite a few times to understand like what about it just, you know, changed things for me like that. I don't really know what it is. There's just something so off-putting and disturbing about the film. I remember one of the things that really just kind of shook me when I was a kid, when I first watched it, was that scene where the one doll's like face gets broken and you find out that it's like a person underneath. Yeah. I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
You know, because I was thinking like they like possessed or something like that. You
know, then, right?
Yeah, just whoa, it just blew my mind.
Such a great idea though. Like that's such an original concept to do that, because you know, like I've seen like Puppet Master, I've seen what's the other one? There's another one that has to do with dolls like that.
Child's Play, maybe.
Yeah, Chucky. That one, and there's a couple other like random ones that came out like after all of that to kind of take the idea and kind of run with it. But I think like original concept, like that movie nailed that, because that's not something I would have expected at all.
Yeah, no, that threw me for a loop for sure. And I think too, part of it is like the it's one of those movies that like really boxes you in, because they're in this house. They don't show you, like, once they're in the house, you don't see anything outside of the house again until the end of the
That's
film.
a good point. Yeah.
And I think they like it closes you in and it makes you feel claustrophobic.
It's
You feel like
isolating.
there's no way out. And of course you're watching this little girl in the midst of all this, like all these adults are dying and all this insanity is happening, and there's just this little girl stuck there, you know. And it just, what a film. I mean, yeah.
It's good. No, I think if I had to say why I think I liked it, which this was one that I did rewatch just because I think it's been a while since I had seen it. But I think one of the things that I like about it is I actually like that, hypothetically speaking, or I guess it depends on how you want to look at it. I feel like technically the dolls and the husband and wife are like not really bad people, because like he talks about, one of the things he talks about is like this, and this is so true. We all turn into assholes when we grow up. Like we grow up and we become like these horrible people. We lose all of our childhood whimsy, our kindness, our like all of our vulnerabilities. Like we turn into whatever life has thrown at us, and then we change because of that. And they talk about that with what's the guy's name that makes it out with her? I can't think of it, but the guy that makes it out at the end, and she's like talking about hooking him up with her mom. The guy that's driving away at the end. Yeah. He but they catch right away that he's got this like inner child, and he's not a horrible adult. And I really kind of like that as far as a depth to a horror movie about killer dolls, because it's something that like kind of lingers, because you're kind of like, well, now I don't want to be a mean adult. Like what if I find myself in this house in the middle of a storm, like, but I really kind of liked that kind of spin on the story of like, they're really just getting rid of adults that don't deserve to be adults.
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting too, because the 80s world was like so focused on like teenagers sneaking off to have sex and partying. I mean, you see it like it's all throughout Friday the 13th and Halloween and even Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's just like, I get it. It was a thing at the time, but at the same time, it's like, it gets kind of tired. There's moments where you're just like, all right, more partying teenagers. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I know.
And Dolls was just so different in that way because, they just completely, I don't know, like they skipped right over that trope, and instead of punishing teenagers for making poor choices, like they're punishing adults for being shitty people, which makes a whole hell of a lot more sense to me.
It does. You can get on board with it. You're like, yeah, sorry, you know what, the dad. I don't know if you allow swearing on your channel. Oh no, you're good.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, and then too, like they protect the girl, right? Like, so they get rid of the bad guys, they protect the girl.
Yep.
And like you said, you finish the film and you're like, well, but were they really that bad of people?
Yeah.
I mean, like,
yeah, you're kind of like, I get it. I interact with adults every day. I understand.
yeah, exactly. I know those kind of people.
Yeah. So the last movie is The Thing.
Yes, another John Carpenter film, obviously.
Yes.
And like I said, the practical effects in that film are just over the top. I think the scene that caught me the most off guard was the scene where the dude's chest bursts open and chomps the other guy's arms off. Like, I never saw that coming. I promise you.
I didn't see that coming either.
And then, from there, like the head spider and all that. Oh my goodness! Like, there's just so many things about that movie to love that are also kind of gross, but like it's just, and there again, that's a film too, I feel like, where they really box you in, right? Because like, that everybody gets dropped off in the middle of the Arctic from a helicopter, and it's just this small group of people, and that's it. That's what you've got those people. And then on top of that, you've got the fact that this alien being, whatever it is, could be any of them, right? So like you're isolated, and now you don't know where this thing is. It's somewhere, it's with you, but where and who and when's it going to strike? And you know what I mean? And it's just, that film is terrifying in all the right ways. Put it that way.
It is. Yeah, it's an anxiety ride for sure. And I think the other thing is like, when it was really smart to have it go through and destroy all their ways to leave.
Yes.
You know, no dogs, no helicopter, no whatever. What was the other option? There was something else.
Like I think they had like the they weren't quite snowmobiles, but like
but something similar
tracks.
Yeah. Like those were not an option. Like you're stuck.
Well, and also that escalates the monster too, right? Because now it's not just this killing machine that's just eating, right? It's thinking, it's calculating, and it's fighting against you, you know, like, yeah, definitely. Oh man, that film is a masterpiece. Ride. Yes. Yeah. And it's a longer movie too. So like it I don't know. It's just like one of those where like you're white knuckling your seat the entire time, you know, like, yeah.
And it's not one that I feel like you notice how long it is, because there's always something going on or something to pay attention to, or like, but also it's not like so nonstop. It's a really good balance of both. There's the kind of slow down moments where you have the interactions with the guys, and then you know, like the relationship questioning of like not trusting each other, and it's like we talked briefly, well, sort of briefly about this through chat, but like with this concept of like what happens to humans when they're put in these situations that like where they turn into their true self, and they like how quick these people who were like, and it shows in the very beginning, they're all buddy, they've worked together, they know each other, they cut up, they're buddies, whatever, and then it's like they're so quick to like lock somebody out into the snow because they're like, you're not getting it here.
Like, yes, I loved you this morning, but now we're done. We're done.
You could be an alien and I'm not having it, so
Well, and too, and the way people like turn on each other, you know, like you'll have someone who's like 1 minute, like, you know, they're trying to help this person like not die or something, you know, like trying to save them, and then the very next second something happens and they're like, oh wait, that's not even really this person, and all of a sudden they're trying to kill them, and it's like, I feel like that kind of mental turmoil is real. Like, I feel like if you were really in that situation, that is probably exactly how you'd react, because you can't even keep up with it as a viewer. So imagine
let
trying to keep
alone
up with
be
it
in it.
being like there's no way. I feel like people would definitely like lose themselves that way, and just at the drop of a dime too, because like, I mean, when your life is in jeopardy, it changes you, you know, like immediately it changes you. So
it's so true. I like that element about it a lot. And I think everybody that was in it did a really good job of kind of pulling us back and forth emotionally. Like you've got, you know, the people like with when what's his name is like destroying everything. And I'm just like from that moment on, everything with the relationship dynamic shifts. And there's this just constant back and forth of who to trust and who not to trust. And then it leaves you as the viewer not trusting anybody either. Like you absolutely take on those emotions because you're just like, I don't know. Like, I feel like
I think they did a good job too, like kind of pointing you towards Kurt Russell's character as like the one you could almost count on to be an actual human. Like, because in the beginning of the film, it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, he's like the big star, so he's the guy to watch. But as the film goes on, that part of it kind of fades, and like you're watching him as the only person that you can even think isn't the creature, right? Because like there's just so many moments in the film where you're like, well, it can't be him because of that. But the rest of the characters, you're like, I don't know. It could be that guy, or it could be her. It could be, I have no idea, you know, like Kurt Russell's the only one you feel like you can trust by the end, you know?
And then the last scene with like everything burning down around them, you're just like, you almost feel like this weird sense of relief, like, oh, thank God. Like,
Yep. That is, that's definitely one of my favorite films.
That's a good one. What's your kind of like interpretation of the ending? So like, you know, there's like a couple theories about how to tell who is like infected or whatever you want to call it, taken over. And some people, like a lot of people think that it's like Mac or Russell's character, or like then, you know, like, or both of them, because they're just kind of sitting there at the end, and it never really dives too much into like specifically like if they both have it, do they both die? Like, you don't know.
Truthfully, I feel like it's how do I put this? It's one of those endings that's just it's kind of tragic, right? Because to me, I interpreted it as, you know, both of them are okay, like they are actually who they are. but now they're stranded in the middle of the Arctic. They have absolutely no way out. They have no communication with the outside world. Like, they survived, but for what? Like, their lives are still over, you know? And so I think when they just kind of quietly sit down, it's like, I mean, what else would you do? Like, you know, you're dead, right? So just, I guess, try to enjoy your last few moments, you know? Like, it is a very tragic ending.
Yeah, it's pretty hopeless. It kind of like endings, like I kind of like open-ended endings sometimes if they're done right, like where you're just kind of left, like it's kind of open to interpretation. You can kind of like, you can think like there's even a small chance that somebody did come for them and one of them made it back.
Possibly.
And then, you know what I mean? Like, it kind of goes like, it can go so many different ways. One of them could be taken over. It could be both of them. It could be, you know, like, you don't know. And I kind of, I think it works really well based on just the shape of how the story kind of builds over time. Like, you're not left unsatisfied, but there not being closure. Like, you're okay with it, you know?
Yeah, I could agree with that. I could agree with that. And there are some films that do that very well, and there are other films that you're asking yourself at the end, why did you do that? Like, you didn't do it well, so why did you choose that? Like,
and it leaves you feeling like an ending. To me, like, it's so hard to get past a bad ending. If you love, you know, an hour and 45 minutes of a movie and the last 10 minutes are garbage, it ruins the whole experience.
It really does. Yep, it really does. And then you're just like, well, I just wasted my entire time. Like, all that time was wasted, you know? Or like the films where like you get the super predictable ending, right? And so like half an hour into the movie, you're like, oh, okay, I think I see where this is going. And then as the movie progresses, you're like, yeah, that's where it's going. And then the ending's just super lackluster because it happens exactly how you thought it would. And you're just like, yay.
And it's been done so many times. Like, if it has like an ending that's been done before, at least make the ride like hard to break apart. Like, at least make it something unique of an experience, that it's not, you know, this same thing over and over and over again. Cause like that's, and I don't know if like, I don't know if you, are you like do you game? Are you a gamer?
A little bit here and there. Yeah.
Okay. So like one of the things that a lot of people were really mad about when they played the original Outlast is the ending, because of how the game ends. You don't, you know, like, a lot of people don't like characters, especially when they're playing them, that built up over this entire time that you've played the story out, for them to like not make it out or have like a happy ending. And it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of like, well, I'm okay with that if it makes sense, if it fits the storyline. And I feel like going into Outlast specifically, it's like, it's kind of one of those like conspiracy type stories where like there really wasn't a way for it to end any differently than how it did. I won't spoil it in case like you haven't played it or you don't know how it ends, but it's like one of those things where you're just like, yeah, but what else could there have been? There was never going to be this like little perfect bow, like happy little ending. I mean, you know, like, and I'm fine with that when it makes sense. And I think the thing did a really good job with that, because I wasn't unsatisfied with that ending. And there's so many times where I have been, but I think that was like really well done.
Oh, definitely. Even though it is kind of, like you said, it is kind of open-ended, but it's also, to me, it felt very, very final, you know, like it's like I said, and maybe that's just because of the way I interpret it and like what I think it means. But to me, it feels very like those guys are damned, and that's it. Like that's the end, you know. Like So it is definitely a solid ending, even though it is a little more open.
Yeah, I think the way that you interpret certain endings like that, especially ones that don't have like a definitive, this is how it ends, can affect you and like what you think about it as a whole in a really good way. Because then you're just like, that's part of actually one of the things that's really fun about getting into reading a lot of horror, is that like you find that your imagination actually like helps make the experience even better, because you're going into a world that is new and unfamiliar and you're reading these things, but there's just enough of a vagueness that you're like, it just like your brain takes over, and then that makes it an even better experience, whether that be in a scary sense or an uncomfortable or whatever. And that's kind of what I think works for this too, is it's just like, it makes it just, your imagination kind of runs with it, and that it makes you feel how you feel about the ending.
Definitely. And I think you're right, though. There should be a certain amount of vagueness, especially when you're talking about Like in films, maybe not so much, but in
Sure.
writing, definitely, because
Yeah.
like you want to allow your reader the opportunity to fill in those blanks.
Sure.
I think that fully, like, let's say, so like fully describing like a creature that you've created, right, is just kind of, I mean, it doesn't leave a lot open to the reader, right? So
Right.
they're stuck with only your interpretation of how this thing looks, versus if you just say that it looked vaguely like a spider, or you
Sure.
describe maybe that it had tentacles or something like that, you're still leaving your reader the opportunity to fill in things like color. Was it slimy or not? Was it
Yeah.
10 feet tall or 6 feet tall? Like, you know, and in a lot of those ways, it's scarier for the reader that way, because they're going to fill in with like the things that have terrified them over the years. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to fill in with a poodle or something like that. You know, they're going to create this terrifying monstrosity that's what you want them to see in their mind, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's kind of like what you talked about leaving it very vague about what something looks like. It's kind of like using the words like an outline of, or like,
Right.
you know, like utilizing just the way you choose to leave it as this like not super defined thing. Like I think that definitely makes things like, for some, like, you know, it's kind of like when you read something like, this is one for me. So like, not, if like when people say stuff like it's like an outline of a figure, but specifically if they say that look like something along, I don't know how you'd word it, but like something along the lines of like something with like long hair, that's so uncomfortable right. for me. Like I immediately go to these places of like, you know, like The Grudge, or like all these, right. you know, like all these places where these women, these female figures with this crazy long hair and you can't see their faces, like, and it's so unsettling, like so unsettling.
Yep, that's exactly it. Yep.
That's probably a good segue to talk about your books.
All right. So I guess so what do you want to know basically?
So I know that so it's Fever Dreams.
Yes.
And there's 5 of them?
Yes, so far there's only 5.
Okay.
I have I have a notebook on my phone that has probably like 60 or 70 story ideas in it. Whew. That I just keep adding to. And it's one of those things, I'm almost a hoarder in that way. Like I don't want to throw anything away because I never know what I might come back to.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
I just write down like the stupidest things. But there again, some of those are what turned into the first 15 stories I wrote for Fever Dreams, were just these off the wall ideas. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to use that. I like that one. Yeah. So, and the series itself is kind of an homage to some of the older, like Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side.
Yeah, I see that.
That's why I chose the 3-story format, even though it does kind of make for some pretty thin books. Yeah. I was trying to kind of recreate a little bit of my childhood, I guess.
Yeah, that's some nostalgia. Yeah.
You know? So, and the title was the thing I struggled with the most, though. I wanted so badly to do something that was Tales from the something, you know, and I racked my brain for a month, and it was like everything I came up with just felt so contrived, you know, like it just felt like I felt like I was trying too hard, you know, and then I was like, okay, so I'm just going to drop that whole concept and find something else. And then I'm not really sure where the title Fever Dreams actually came from. It was just kind of something that I kind of stumbled across in my own head. And I was like, you know what, actually that sounds good. I like that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's interesting. Like I like the name. I think the name is captivating, and I love the art, which I know I've shared before. I love the covers of all of them. I think the first 2. And like I mentioned, I just started the first one like 2 days ago, I think. And so far I really love it. I mean, I think especially just considering like the fleshing out of the first couple of people I've met so far. And I like the way that you write style wise. It's engaging. I feel like I'm having a really good experience. I'm actually looking forward to reading the rest of them. And I told you, I was like, I'm so against Kindle because I hate, like, I don't want to read it on my phone. So I was like, I'm going to have to find something bigger. So I ended up getting I have like an old tablet that I haven't used in like 2 years that I've like went through all these updates and I finally got it working, and it's nice to see it on like a bigger screen, but but I'm really excited to read them. I think the thing about dreams is kind of perfect for shorts in general.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's great that that's where you ended up as far as name, because I mean it makes perfect sense. It's all different types of things. They're, like it's really fitting.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think you'll notice too, as you go through, you'll see that the cover art kind of coordinates with some of the stories that
Okay.
are in the book. The only exception would be the first one. There isn't really any story that matches the cover art with like the hands and the eye, but that one was more about capturing like the feel of the series as a whole, right?
Okay.
So like when I saw that image, so I'll be honest, I use a lot of like royalty free images and stuff, and then I just kind of create from that.
Yeah.
And when I saw that image, I was like, okay, that's perfect.
I
have to have that.
It hit.
And so and then I got the space background, and I was like, yeah, that's it right there. That's
Love it.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
So, and then the font that I used for the actual like title, Fever Dreams, kind of to me feels like the old movie marquee kind of thing. You know, and I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. I had a lot of fun creating that cover. I'll put it that way.
That's really good. Yeah, that's great.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that one, I'm definitely like I've got a bunch of stuff on the back burner. Right now, I'm actually kind of working on a follow up to my actual. Well, I'm not sure I want to call it a full novel. I think it's probably closer to a novella length story because it's only about 50,000 words. But so I'm working on a sequel to that. I was trying to do some more of the shorts, but this story idea just kept like smacking me in the back of the head and was like, hey, you should write this. Hey, you should write this, And so like eventually I was like, okay, I'll put the shorts on the back burner for a little while and I'll work on this, So it's been a lot of fun because this one is like, so the first one, I kind of did a lot of, like changing from like different groups of people, so like not really, I wouldn't call it head hopping, but just kind of like following different storylines and with different people.
Right. Yeah.
This one is like there's just like so many more people and so many more storylines going on. Like, I'm not sure what I got myself into. I've been having fun with it, but there's also some concern trying to keep track of everything. So that one's, and I'm really happy with how it's coming along so far though.
That's good. Is this, so the one that you're talking about working on, is this the one that you shared, like something that came in your head, like you typed out the other day?
Actually, no, that was a whole other one that popped into my head. Yeah. And this is how I get into the trouble of having the huge notebook, you see, because my brain is just like, hey, over here. And I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
It's terrible. I promise you. I'm like a dog, squirrel, But so that one, actually, the one I shared on Twitter the other day was just a small thing that kind of popped into my head as I was laying down to sleep. And I was like, dude, I got to write that down because that's good. I got to write that down. So I wrote it down and then I was like, well, what the heck am I going to do with it? And I thought, well, you know what? I'll share it on Twitter and see if anybody likes it. Maybe I'll actually write it into something. If not, whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I was just curious if it was part of that or if it was something else.
No, unfortunately, it's something entirely different because my brain can't stay on one track.
Yeah.
That's how the short stories work, though, because they're just everywhere, and so.
Yeah, you're not
so
forcing
I can just
yourself.
let my brain do stupid, know. I'm like, hey, go ahead, have fun.
Yeah.
Like a kid at the playground. Like, go do your thing.
Yeah. You don't have to spend one time doing just like, or all your time on just like one thing. No, that's great. And I'm a big fan of like anthology style stuff anyway. As far as like, I watch a lot of anthology shows, like I'm getting more into reading. So I wasn't like, I grew up reading like Christopher Pike. Of course I read like Goosebumps and I got a little bit older. I read a little bit of King. My introduction to King was actually movies first though. I didn't read a lot of him growing up. And then, but like, there's like this huge like gap in my life where like I just didn't have time for reading. Like ever. And I don't know how you guys, I cannot keep up with you book people. Like I try so hard, and I'm like, I got all of these things sound so good and I want to read all of them, but I barely have time to read like the ones that I have. But the good thing about getting into anthologies or shorter stories is that I don't feel as overwhelmed by the commitment. Right. It's like, I can read this and I can move on. And then some of the indie authors I found, like, oh, they're like, their novels are kind of shorter. They're like, or they're shorter. So they're just not as big of a time commitment.
Yeah, I've been trying to, kind of get it out there, like through social media and stuff, but yeah. I mean, it's difficult, because there's so many voices out there now,
yeah.
I mean, when you get into social media, it's like, I mean, there's millions of us out there trying to say, hey, look at this thing I made, and it's like, well, you got to try to compete with that. But at the same time, like, I feel like this is a community where you're not really, like, it's not okay to step on someone else's toes to try to get ahead either. You know what I mean? Like the way we all interact with each other.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be like, okay, well, I don't want you to read Josh Marcello's book because you got to read mine instead. Like, no, please, by all means, go read Josh's book. Go buy that one, but come on back my way when you're done.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think I've been kind of I think a little like surprised by the community as a whole. Like I see it from not even just with people who have helped support me or who share my stuff or whatever, but like just watching like you guys interact separately, like seeing the stuff that everybody shares. And I've been blown away because I'll be totally honest with you. So my other channel that I've had for 2 years is a mom channel. And I started it because I wanted it to be this very like honest, blunt, raw reality of
like
what motherhood
it's really
is
like to be a mom.
Yes, because everything out there is bullshit. And I'm thinking like, when I first had my son, I was like, I don't have any of this knowledge base. I don't have people to talk to. I don't feel like anything that I'm experiencing is relatable. And I'm like, and I was telling my best friend does a channel with me, and she and I were talking. And I was telling her, I said, you would not believe the difference in the support in the horror community. But like the whole thing is like, I'm blown away with it. But the horror community is not like that. Like it seems to be so like warm and open,
And it's strange, right? Because like it's a bunch of people that are into watching films about murderers and monsters and stuff, and yet we're like the chill group. It's crazy.
It's crazy. I
have loved it myself because I didn't really know what to expect. I was just kind of like, we'll see what happens when I get out there, and I was just blown away by how many people are like sharing each other's stuff, giving each other shout outs, doing stuff, just collaborations like what we're doing right now, stuff like that. Like it's mind boggling to me to see that, especially when we are truly actually kind of in competition with each other, right? If you think about it,
yes.
we all want to be read. We all want to have views on our videos and stuff like that. But at the same time, like that's not so important to us that we're willing to shut other people out. And that is awesome. And it has blown me away.
And I feel like because we group together, we help each other become more successful, which I think is something that a lot of people in maybe other areas don't recognize. And I think it's so funny that you said you're like, and we're some of the like cool, the chillest people. So when we did that live thing on Tuesday for Josh's book release, first of all, I was like, I was like blown away that I even got invited to be a part of that. I was like, holy cow. Like I was so excited to be a part of it. And so like, but he said something similar. He was like, he's like, it's so funny, like we get judged about being in the horror world. Like there's always this like preconceived thing by people who don't like horror or who aren't into it, that you're like, oh, you're a bunch of weirdos and blah blah blah. And it's like, and he's like, but we're all like animal lovers, we all own a cat. Like it's just like, and I'm like sitting here like, yeah, that's so freaking true. Like I had a coworker, literally, like I decorated my office for Halloween, and he asked me very oddly, was like, is Halloween your thing? And I was like, well, I mean, horror in general is kind of my thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I wouldn't have expected that. And I couldn't help it. I'm kind of blunt in general, but I was like, well, you don't really know me that well. So why would you have known what to expect? I was like, also, it takes a 5-minute conversation with me to know that that's like who I am. Is, I mean, like I wear like my horror t-shirts and my jeans to school, to work. Like, this is not new, like,
this is
God.
This is ingrained.
Yeah.
This is just part of who I am.
He made his mind up about who I was as a person in 30 seconds because I said that I was into the horror world, and I was like, get the fuck out of my office. Like, what are you even doing in here?
Yeah, right. Like, come on. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Like, my wife and I have talked about, because we've got some pretty nice decorations from Spirit Halloween, you know.
Yeah.
And we've talked about just leaving them up all year and then just putting like the Santa hats on them.
Yeah. We've said that.
Perfect. And I'm like, do you realize what people are going to think if they see the giant thing in the yard with a Santa hat on top?
Oh my God, you know? That's perfect though. I love it. Yeah. My husband and I collect
neighbors out here. So.
Oh, right. My husband and I collect skulls. Like we have, there's a Netherworld is like a really big haunted house here. And like every year that we haven't gone the last 2 years because of COVID, but when we have gone, we always get whatever their new skull is. We like have them everywhere. And we've done the same thing. We get like little mini ones and you just put the house.
Yes. Like, yes. Why not?
You know, the season. Like,
yes. Agreed.
Cool. Well, I won't take up too much more of your time. This has been a great conversation, though.
It has. Yeah. It's been very
awesome. And whenever I post the videos are going out in January, I'm not 100% sure of the order because I'm trying to rotate my genders. So I'm doing like female, male, and but when it does, I'll let you know. And I'm gonna link all of your stuff in my description for my video. So cool. When you get to this point in the video, click all the links below and go look at his stuff. And then, yeah, and I'll let you know when it goes live and all of that stuff too. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I've been like, I'm loving these conversations. They're just like so exciting. Like I look forward to every single one because they're all so different. We always talk about different things. The only common thing I can say is no matter who I'm talking to, there's always tangents involved.
Oh yeah. But you gotta figure we're talking about something that we're passionate about.
I know.
You know, and stuff, so it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. But anyway, yeah. All right, cool. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your night. What's today? Saturday? And enjoy your rest of your weekend.
Will do. You do the same. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. It was a blast. I loved our conversation. It was great.
Awesome. Cool. Catch you later.
All right, see ya. Have a good night.
Hey guys, thanks a lot for hanging out and watching our top 5 influential horror movies. I'm really enjoying doing these episodes. They are a lot of fun, and I am really enjoying the interactions I'm having with other people in the horror community. So I hope you are enjoying watching them as much as I am having them. These episodes will be also listed on our podcast, which will be in the description below. And you can go there to listen to the full episode without the cuts that we had to make for time references for YouTube. And yeah, make sure you circle back. There's going to be 11 episodes total. So make sure you're caught up on all of the ones before and after. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy your weekend. We will see you in the next one.